I'll drive by a bus stop now, and I'll look over there and I'll see those kids, and nobody's talking to each other. They're all on their phones doing their own thing.
Yeah.
And that, unfortunately, has been a detriment to communication, creating friendships, just a number of things that I think that's hurt our youth.
Hey, thank you for joining us today on Identity University. My name is Mike Feynman, and I'm here with my great friend, Coach Brett Campbell. He is a basketball coach that coached D1 basketball for many years, and he's been working with my son, my 16-year-old, and making great strides with his improvement. I know that he's made an impact on my son's and my lives, and I know that he will for you as well. How you doing, brother?
Good, Mike. Good to see you today.
You too. Thank you. Man, you've been instrumental in my son's basketball growth, and you've made a huge impact on who he is as a player, and it's been a huge blessing for us. But not only that, we've gotten to talk about being dads, and you're a dad later in life as well. Again, got another round, which is really cool. I think it's really neat. And but also we've gotten to talk about young men and the way that things have shifted. But before we go into that, I would love for you to share kind of who you are, so the audience knows who you are as a person.
Sure. Well, I was very blessed at a young age. I grew up in Indiana, where they kind of hand you a basketball as soon as you come out of the womb. So you got to know that sport.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate enough to play high school basketball, get a college scholarship, went to Valdosta State in South Georgia, played there. Met a coach that was just wonderful, Coach James Dominy. In fact, going to a reunion here in about a few weeks.
That's cool.
But he kind of made an impact in my life also about coaching and maybe going into that profession, because I hadn't really thought about it until I was, working under him and playing under him for 4 years. So I went into college basketball. I was actually on his staff for a couple years, moved around, spent about 34 years in the business, and a lot of great opportunities, great relationships. And I think probably one of the better things in the whole scheme of coaching, not about winning and losing. Sure, we went to the NCAA tournaments. We won some championships. We had some tough seasons too. In the course of 34 years, you see a little bit of everything. But
Yeah.
I think probably the biggest thing was just developing relationships with young men. Typically, you would recruit a high school player at the age of 18. They would be with you 4 to 5 years. They leave, at 22 to 23, and you hope you've had an impact in their life. And then you still have those relationships. You get calls on the phone, Coach, how you doing? So that was probably the biggest blessing in coaching over the course of those years.
That's really cool. And you took a few boys, you helped them all the way to the NBA, didn't you?
Sure. I've had a handful of guys playing the NBA, and probably over, 30 to 35 players play professionally, whether overseas or wherever that may be.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's, you said something that really hit me. And I talk about this all the time. You said that they call you after the fact, even though that you're not coaching them anymore. And as a dad, one of the things that I really hit on is I think that if you coach well as a father, you get to be the consultant. If you don't coach well, you don't get to be the consultant. And it's interesting, in the JH Outback program I'm a part of, one of the things they teach is the transition of a child's life. And so you start out as their caretaker when they're little, and then when they turn about 4 or 5 years old, you become the cop, right? But you have to know when to turn the cop off. So at about 12 or so, they start wanting some independence. They start pulling away, and you have to move into the coach role, where you have to let them make really dumb mistakes, but you're there to help them through it. But if you do that part well, that's when you get to be consultant.
Well, you do. And again, I look back. I was really blessed. My father was one of the most positive people for sure in my life growing up. And I always say this, I think everybody needs and responds to encouragement. So I always kind of use that, always kind of had that on the backdrop of my board in any office I coached at, tried to incorporate that with my players, but I also tried to incorporate that with my own children. And you're right, I have 3 older children. Wonderful. They're not kids anymore. They're grown up, but you're right. I started again. I've got a young 6.5 year old now. So it's a little different environment for dad again.
It sure is.
I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And it's been wonderful. And again, it's just trying to make an impact in their lives. As I said, as I did with players, you really want to be able to influence your children, and you want that respect. But as you said, sometimes it's challenging, because when do you
Absolutely.
become, that cop, and when do you be that encourager and also a friend at the end of the day?
Right. And that consultant part is where you really get, I know that your kids were just in recently, and they want to hang around you. And that speaks volumes about how you've parented.
Well, I appreciate that. And we do. We look forward to seeing each other.
Yeah.
They brought some of their high school friends down. And we hung out for a weekend. I was trying to be 21 as good as I could.
You still recovering from that?
But no, it's always a good time.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So over the years, it was a long time. And you said earlier, you've seen a lot, right? And I believe you have. And that's why I really wanted you to come and hang out with me on the program. And one of the things I'd love to hear from you is how you've seen young men change over that time period, because fathers have changed. And I've done a lot of studies on this, but the lack of understanding of being parented well, being fathered well, creates a lack of understanding on how to be a father. And so the impact is on our kids. We see it because they don't know how to communicate that, but they sure act it out.
Sure. And you're exactly right. Being in the business that long, several decades, you've seen a change. I'm not sure for the better or for the worse. It's just the times have changed. There used to be a lot. We talked about obligations and responsibilities, kind of changed over to rights and privileges.
Yeah.
Society created that a little
Wow.
bit. And so we lost a little bit of accountability through that process. And, I would always talk about, in developing players, but also your youth. A couple things I think were so important is number one, work ethic. And I think we've lost a little bit of how to roll up your sleeves and really work in today's society with kids.
Yeah.
A lot of children, they want to get on their video, they want to get on their phone, and they live that life in social media, and it kind of distracts from learning how to really roll up your sleeves and work extremely hard.
It does.
And the other thing would be self-confidence. I think kids can gravitate to places they don't need to go if they really don't have good self-confidence, because somebody will accept them somewhere, and that may not be the best place they need to be accepted.
You're right.
So you got to be really careful. And I say self-confidence in today's world, you almost need, and not that in today's world, but God's confidence. And if you can accept that and create that, it's not so much just about self. You're living under God's rule and you're trying to please him.
Right.
But at the same time, it also gives you a bit of self-confidence where you can kind of be wary of what's out there. You can tell people no. That's okay.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I always kind of say is you got to be respectful. You want and that's the beautiful thing about your son. I knew right away. He look you right in the eye, say, yes, sir. You've done a great job with Josh.
Thank you.
That's important for young men to learn how to be respectful, young men and young women, but we're primarily talking about men right now, and how to become a man and look somebody in the eye and shake their hand, but not only respect other people, but also respect themselves. And, that way they guard themselves from doing something they shouldn't get involved in.
That's right. Because they have that confidence to not be pulled into something just to be part of or just to be cool.
Exactly. And there's a lot of areas, as I've seen over several years, that people can be pulled a lot of directions. And the things that we're seeing now and our kids are seeing now is a little scary at the end of the day.
Right.
There's a lot of things, obviously, with television, social media, movies, whatever that may be. You've really got to guard your children on what they are seeing. And sometimes they may think, hey, Dad, you're getting a little over the top, but we're still in a protection mode.
Yes.
And we want what's best for them. So we still got to be kind of oversee what they're really into. And
It's true.
the old adage of, hey, show me your 5 friends and I'll show you your future. But that's pretty important. You can usually tell a lot about people by who they're hanging
Yeah.
around, who their friends are. And I think that's important for, fathers to kind of look at and see, hey, who are my children hanging around with on the weekends or at school, and what's coming out of their mouths, what's coming across,
Exactly.
is there a respect issue there? Self-confidence, do they have that? Work ethic, those ingredients I think will help develop a young man.
You're right. Man, that is serious wisdom. Thank you. That's a lot to process. That's great. I think those kids, my son's friends, are attracted to him because of who he's becoming. And what that tells me sometimes is that sometimes some of the ones that are attracted to that don't have it. And so as dads, I think it's important that we, like you said, your son came down with some of his high school friends. They came down because they remember you, and they remember you, quote unquote, coaching them too.
Sure.
And I'm sure, without knowing, I know that that's true because I do the same. And it's important for us to father all the kids in our entire realm of influence because a lot of them don't have a good father.
Exactly. They may not have a good father, or they may have a father that wasn't very good.
Exactly.
So either way, any type of influence that we can be on young men, I think it's important for all of us out there to have an impact and make a difference in people's lives at the end of the day.
Yep, I agree totally. Man, that's amazing. I think also the reason we called this program Identity University is because we looked at confidence. We looked at self-esteem. We looked at, what are the things that are causing kids to go into people groups or groups of people that they don't belong in, but were accepted. And so they go and pretend to be that even sometimes, or become that because they were accepted. What does that all boil down to when you get to the root, to the root, to the root? And it's identity.
Exactly. I totally agree with you and your thoughts on that. I do think it helps to create a passion for your children, whether that be music, whether that be mathematics, whether that be some type of sport, baseball, basketball. You need to maybe help them, but they've got to kind of determine what that is. But
Right.
I think at a young age, you can kind of help develop some passions. And if you don't have a passion in life, I really worry about how fulfilled you are in life at the end of the day.
And where you're directing your energy. They have a lot of energy to direct. Where is your attention going?
And hopefully it's not on that phone 24/7.
And that's
or it's video games 24/7.
Right.
And that's what really worries me about today's youth is, are they really passionate? And, even late in my career when I was coaching, we go to the dinner pregame, and I'd say, fellas, you got to put your phones away. All right.
Yeah.
We got to communicate. All
Right.
We're a team. Otherwise they might pull out that phone, and I'll drive by a bus stop now, and I'll look over there and I'll see those kids, and nobody's talking to each other. They're all on their phones doing their own thing.
Yeah.
And that unfortunately has been a detriment to communication, creating friendships, just a number of things that I think that's hurt our youth.
Communication is one of the greatest issues. I totally agree that we're dealing with. And learning to communicate is difficult. You make a lot of mistakes. You hurt people's feelings. You get into pickles, into problem situations because you communicated incorrectly, which is how you learn. Bumps and bruises along the way are great trials. Count it all joy because that's where you learn. But they've learned how to get around it by texting. And COVID made it way worse. All the kids that were a little bit pulled back, really a lot of them pulled back. But now look at texting. You have high-level CEOs texting each other. And so it is because those little kids that were texting, they're now high-level CEOs. Sure. And it has become a culture problem, a lack of communication, which also creates a lack of connection. And a lack of connection is really where this massive identity crisis is coming from.
It is. It's scary because, connections. And again, I always revert back to basketball slogans or whatever I might have in the locker room. But one of the things that I got from the New York Knicks many years ago, and you would send out different things. I got in the mail, but it was one I put on the bulletin board for all our teams, and it said, good teams have good teammates. Great teams have great teammates. Have you made your teammate better today? So
Oh, that's
when
great.
you're talking about communicating, are you making people around you better? Are you encouraging people? So, but that's what kind of gets back to your communication standpoint is, hey, you got to learn how to communicate, and it makes the world better.
It does.
Are you giving? What are you giving out of yourself and with your friends? And,
Right.
what kind of energy are you bringing? Because, we've got some people, like I call them vampires, that drain you with bad energy.
Yeah.
You want to be that guy that, boom, let me give you some good energy today. And,
Yeah.
not only as fathers and as we're older, but I always kind of encourage. It was my son playing basketball several years ago, and I said, how many times did you dap your teammates coming down the floor? He thought about it. Maybe 4 or 5. I said, we need 20 daps. All right.
Yeah.
Well, now you see him play, he's dapping everybody coming down the floor, but that's good energy. So that passes along and it's positive. So those are just small things I think people can do, and maybe we can encourage as fathers. And I think that helps overall.
That's awesome.
With friends and teammates.
And I think fathers, every child needs the approval of a father. And so going back to what you said about getting kids involved in something, one of the things I met with a group of single moms, young single moms one time, and we were talking about how to create that father figure in their kid's life if they don't have it. And I said to them, you can raise a phenomenal young man, but women cannot raise a man. It takes a man to raise a man. And I've told countless stories about this. So with that being said, how do you find that in your life? And it could be a grandfather, it can be an uncle, it can be a friend, it can be any of that. But oftentimes a coach is the best place to go. And if a single mom, or, even if it's time shared, that boy is not getting, or that girl is not getting full-time, fathering, which they need.
Sure.
And they need it from the mother as well. I'm not discounting that any. It's required. Right. They need that nurturing and that love and those things to carry on. But if you'll take them to a coach and say, listen, I need my son or my daughter to be poured into by a father figure. Can you do that? And the coach might say, hey, listen, I'm just here to, take my kid's in it and blah, blah, blah. Okay, great. Move on to another one. Because the truth is, you'll find that a lot of men in that position will say, absolutely, that's why I'm here.
Right. No, exactly. And you do need that, some type of mentoring from a male figure. And, that you may need to find that at your church, in a church group.
Yeah. It's a great place to find it.
I think that's one of the best places to find it, to be honest with you. But, you hope you can find somebody in your social circle. If not, you may need to reach out and find who that person is. But it is so important for young men to learn how to become men. And unfortunately, sometimes they don't have that opportunity.
Yeah.
And then it's difficult for them.
Well, I tell a story, I call it the elephant story. So if the viewers haven't seen it, I urge them to check it out on our YouTube channel. It's called the elephant story. Super cool. And it really relates to that as well. So let me ask you a question. If you could have a group of fathers in a room right now, and there'll be fathers watching this and mothers, what are some of the things that you would tell them to give them some practical ideas on how they can implement these things that we talked about?
Well, I think number one is encouraging your children. Say words of encouragement, be very positive.
Yep.
I think first and foremost, that's super important. Again, I mentioned that earlier because I think everybody needs and responds to encouragement at the end of the day. I think say I love you a little bit more. I think that's challenging for males. That's not easy. Like we're supposed to be these hard, tough guys,
Yeah.
But you got to say I love you to your children. Let them know that you do love them, because obviously we do. But there may be some father figures that I don't know how to say it because their father never said it.
Absolutely.
So those and make your children accountable.
Yes.
I think we have gotten to the place where we make alibis for our children, whether it's in school, whether it's on the court, whether it's in the neighborhood, that all of a sudden they can't do anything wrong. Like, I'm going to cover them up. Like, wait a second, we're all going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
But hold them accountable for what they are doing, whether they didn't do their homework last night, whether they didn't get to school in time. I mean, we're all going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
If you don't hold people accountable,
especially young men.
Exactly. They're just going to continue to do wrong things.
That's right.
I would say those areas are really important.
That's great. And that's powerful. I can't tell you how many times I've been on the phone with my son and say, I love you, boy. And they hear him back, I love you, Dad. And they pull me aside and they go, man, I wish I'd had that. I never had that. And so these things, all these things that we're trying to share on Identity U come up all the time. And the impact that it makes just in day-to-day conversation is unbelievable. And you and I are very aligned in the way that we see things. And that's why I love having you with my son, and I trust you. I don't even stay. With most coaches, I will stay because I don't want anything. With you, I trust you because I know that we're on the same wavelength. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate what you've done. And years from now, I hope he makes it to his NBA dream, and we can look back at this and laugh because
that
pretty
would be
cool.
Great.
Yeah,
I've enjoyed it. And that's why I still like to work with young men.
Yeah.
Hopefully I can make an impact, not only make him a better player, but, as whatever I can do to encourage him. But
Yeah.
I love to see his confidence grow. And I've seen Josh's confidence grow over the past 6 months. And that's really important in anything you do to accomplish what you want to do.
It's been great. And you've been a big part of that. So thank you very much.
So I appreciate it.
I hope that you were impacted as much as I was today by Coach Campbell's wisdom that he shared. I will go back and look at it again, and I hope that you do too, because I know that this is going to make me into a better father, and I know it'll help you as well. It's really important that we take these type of teachings, this type of wisdom, and apply it, not just hear it. I know that it will help you with your kids, and I hope that it made the impact on you that it made on me, like he's making on my son. Thank you for joining us today on Identity University. This was an amazing program. We thank you for being a part of our journey. My name is Mike Feynman, and I'm a dad.